I would bet that that is the same light fixture that has been there since electricity came to this house. Hi, it's Kate Wood from Worth Preserving. I am so excited to take you on a tour of this circa 1903 house in Fitzgerald, Georgia. A lot of people would call this house Victorian. Why in the United States are we calling architecture Victorian? It really just refers to that long period of time when Queen Victoria was on the British throne. But in fact, what I would call this house is Queen Anne, and I'll tell you why. So what calls out to me as Queen Anne, it is not symmetrical. So this is the biggest break between this style of house and houses that had been built, say, before the Civil War in America, which were more the classical style, like Greek Revival or Federal architecture. In the second half of the 19th century, right up until the early 20th century, they were building these houses that almost exploded out of that floor plan. So this house is not symmetrical. It's got these projecting bays, so there's this movement in the floor plan. I love this octagonal tower that sticks out of one corner of the house. You've got a very complex roof line. So you've got the roof on that tower, you've got this hipped roof on the center part of the house, and then this more traditional gable on the other end of the house. And what ties it all together is this wraparound porch. So one house, two queens. Is it Victorian or is it Queen Anne? Who was Queen Anne? Queen Anne was Queen of England in the early 18th century. So why is this house that was built around the turn of the 20th century called Queen Anne? It's just a reflection of this interest in looking backward at these revival styles, sort of cherry-picking history for these references, these historical references. And it's also during this time when people are very interested in simplicity and craft, even though many of the parts of this house were actually made in factories and mass-produced. You could order them in catalogs. But there was still this sense of wanting something that was wholesome and sweet and simple. And that's why Queen Anne is also sometimes referred to as arts and crafts. They're related. First, we looked at overall shape of this house. Now let's look at texture. The first thing I'm noticing is this beautiful horizontal clapboard siding. Also the double hung windows. In this house, it looks like the top sashes might actually be a little bit smaller than the bottom sash. More Queen Anne signature style is these delicate scrolled brackets on the porch and the spindles in the fretwork at the top of the porch. I also love this detail on the side. Remember we talked about the projecting bays and the movement in the floor plan? You've got this ground floor room on the side that is shaped like an octagon, but then above it, it's just a standard square. But how they've handled the detail is you've got these projecting corners with the brackets coming up, and it's just a beautiful little way to reconcile those two spaces. You can catch a glimpse up here in the gable. The siding changes, so you've got horizontal on the bottom two floors, but then up in the top of this gable, you've got shingles, so more beautiful texture. I love original windows in a house, and here you've got fairly simple 1/1 sashes, but some of them have this border of smaller lights, and when we go inside, you'll see that some of them are filled with colored glass. So let's move inside, and we are going to go straight to the kitchen because it is so exciting to me. It is probably as original a kitchen as I've ever seen in an early 20th century house. This was back before kitchens had built-in cabinets and cupboards, so it was more that the kitchen was an arrangement of furniture. Even the sink would have been standalone. Of course, the appliances would have been standalone. You would have had a stove or a range of some kind, and then a piece of furniture in the middle of the room, a work surface. I love the beadboard ceiling too. You can see that this is the kind of kitchen that I had in mind when I was putting together the design for this house in Germantown. It has some built-in cabinets, but it's really centered around this table, this kitchen table right in the middle. And we still wanted to maintain that sense of individual furniture pieces. I often say about kitchens and bathrooms that, those are the parts of the house that evolve most often, so they change with almost every generation. So to find an original kitchen is really pretty special. But with the design, you don't have to go back to something that was authentically original to the house. It is okay to have modern kitchens and bathrooms in houses. I mean, a lot of houses never had a kitchen on the main floor or indoor plumbing for that matter. So this is a place where you can insert modern conveniences. But that said, I really love the look of these old kitchens. So this is also amazing. I mean, look at these tall ceilings. In a relatively modest house, you've got ceilings that must be 10 feet high or even more. And it's more of that beadboard. And it looks like it may even have its original finish. Like no one has ever touched that with a paintbrush. It's just incredible. The same with the doors and the trim. What I really love about the trim around these doors is the little ears that stick up at the corners. I want to point out the mantle as well. It has been painted. It may have originally not been painted, but it's this fireplace surround that has that traditional, could be almost Federal or early American look to it, but it is one piece, the fireplace surround plus the overmantel. And this is the kind of thing that a homeowner could have bought from a catalog that would have been delivered in one piece and then ably installed by local builders. It would probably have been very similar to a mantle in the house next door, for example. It's such a great reflection of what the taste was circa 1903. The hardwood floors in this room are lovely, but let's remember that they probably would have originally been covered with wall-to-wall carpeting. It's only more recently that our taste for these kind of wide-board hardwood floors has come into fashion. These were very simple floors that probably were meant to be covered, but imagine when this house was originally built and you had wall-to-wall carpeting on the floor, wallpaper on the walls, great texture of beadboard ceiling, maybe even a border around the top that, like it does today. The riot of color and pattern in this room would have been incredible. I mentioned that Queen Anne, there was kind of this yearning for pastimes and simplicity, but that didn't rule out a statement staircase. Here you've got this great wooden staircase that wraps around, more of that beadboard ceiling. You see some of the stained glass, the panel in the stair hall. This was a grand entrance to this house. And I would bet that that is the same light fixture that has been there since electricity came to this house. So maybe 1920s. That's another great feature of this house, is all the historic lighting that it has. So there is really nothing that gives me more pleasure than looking at a house like this and shining some light on what's worth preserving and how to bring that into the present. So if you have a house that needs some light and love, please reach out. It would be so much fun to talk to you about it.